America's pastime. That's right, the game of baseball. On today's Deeper History.
Let's go!
We are here today with Coach Eilert, who is a big baseball fan, to talk about the history of baseball. Now, let's face it, we could stand here for a couple of days probably and talk about this subject.
Ken Burns did an 8-hour DVD on it.
Right. Go find that Ken Burns 8-9-hour documentary if you want to see the whole thing. But we're going to attempt to condense this down in a half hour. So we'll see. Now, we just had an interesting off-camera conversation because I was mentioning that the history books would say that Cooperstown, New York, 1839, is basically when we had the invention of baseball. Although historians everywhere agree that really the fundamentals of it came from the games from England, cricket and rounders. Correct?
That's correct.
But you said that we're sort of thinking that it was way earlier than that now.
Right. Even though it gained popularity during the Civil War, mainly from the Union Army, it's actually been proven in town laws in 1791 in New England that they could not play baseball as we know it within so many yards of the town buildings or whatever. So there's some mention of it going back until after the Revolutionary War.
So those written laws are what have now led us to believe
Right.
that it was...
It has not been 100% proven, but it's looking more and more like Doubleday is not
Evidence.
really the creator of baseball as we know it to be.
Evidence is leading us to believe that.
Right.
Okay, now, what about Alexander Joy Cartwright, who would codify the set of rules that really established the game that we know of today? Is that still pretty much the gold standard for the way we're playing baseball now?
Yeah, you really have two sets of rules. You've got MLB rules, and you've got college/high school federation rules.
All right, explain, because many of us who are watching this may not know about all of the rules for baseball.
Well, if you grow up playing USAA baseball, you play pro rules, modified pro rules. You know, college and high school rules are different, and probably the biggest one, for example, is it's a balk if the pitcher intentionally tries to, make the batter think that I'm not going to throw the batter, I'm going to step off and throw to first or whatever.
Right.
In high school, that ball's dead. But in pro ball, if you make a balk and you still pitch it and the batter hits a home run, you get to choose the home run or the balk. And so it's just kind of things like
Okay.
that, but it's really small,
So very minute details.
very minute details. But it's basically the same set of rules, just as different for the pro player as it is for high school and college.
Okay, interesting. All right, now here's a big one: the leagues. Now, step me through. If we go back into history.
Right.
There is obviously the first league was really established, or I guess it was just a group of guys who were interested in playing baseball
Right.
in New York.
Right.
But then, as time goes on, I guess they start to realize, hey, money can be made from this. Business takes over, as always.
Yeah.
And then we start to establish leagues. And today, there's really two leagues that stand out in history. That would be the National League and the American League.
Yes.
Explain a little bit about the history of the leagues.
Well, like you just said, it started in the East Coast, and as the American population shifted west, the game of baseball and like other professional sports or whatever shifted west. It was basically up until the 1960s. The furthest west city was Chicago, St. Louis area. That was
Right.
as far west as baseball went. When the Brooklyn Dodgers did not get the new stadium they wanted, that stadium that they wanted was going to go to the New York Mets. The owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers said, well, see ya. They went to L.A., and they became the L.A. Dodgers. And that was the first time that baseball was on the West Coast, and baseball slowly moved toward the West Coast. You had the
So
New
we
York Giants.
jumped from Chicago all the way to L.A. I
Right.
mean, they didn't just go west. They went as far west as they could possibly go.
Right. You had the New York Giants went to San Francisco. The Philadelphia Athletics went to Oakland. That kind of thing.
So, and when was that they moved? The Dodgers moved?
They did not get their stadium in the late 50s. So it was about the mid 60s, early 60s is when they moved out west and became the LA Dodgers.
So throwing a fit about not having a brand shiny new stadium goes all the way back that long ago.
Oh, yeah.
Even back then, they were wanting new stadiums.
Exactly.
All right, that's interesting. Talk about a little bit about some of the rules, some of the controversies that stand out in my mind in the modern era of baseball. Number one, bats used. We've had a lot of attention in the media with the dangers of balls coming off of the metal bats a little bit too quickly. The classic bat, of course, is
Right.
the wooden bat. Tell me a little bit about that controversy and what's happening.
Well, high school, little league, and college use aluminum bats. Single A ball up to the major league level uses wood bats. And obviously, anybody who pays attention to science class knows an object is faster off the bat than it is going to the bat. But players don't really get hit as much anymore. It's usually the fans at the ballparks who are on the cell phone the entire time.
Right, who aren't paying attention.
And then a foul ball comes flying across their nose.
It's very dangerous, by the
Yeah.
way. You have to pay attention in those
There's-
ballparks.
and ballparks are getting safer and safer. They're actually putting netting all the way down the first and third line to probably, foul territory now. And so that's kind of, but
Right.
yeah.
And back in the day, it was just really right around the pitching box that they had a fencing of some sort.
Right.
And then obviously, I guess the wooden bat itself absorbs some of that energy, and the metal bat just pushes all that energy out on the ball, which is why they're now
Right.
saying. And there was still a pretty healthy group of people within the game who were wanting to do away with metal bats, even into high school and little.
I know there's a movement in college to get them to go to the wooden bats, but the problem is wooden bats, they break easily. If a player gets frustrated, when I grew up, the famous image of Bo Jackson snapping his wooden bat over his knee. Or, if you look at players now, Harper, he slams his bat down and it breaks when he strikes out. So with the aluminum bat, that doesn't break. It just gets dented and you buy a new one. But with the wood bats, to me, I'm a purist. There's nothing like the sound, of a wooden bat. But college is trying to move toward the wooden bat a little bit. But I think high school allows both an aluminum and wooden bat. But it's just what people prefer. It's just a preference.
All right. Now, the other modern controversy. It's the big one. The players and their salaries. Where in many games, or most professional games today, there's what we call the salary cap. In baseball, we really don't have that. And that allows certain teams who have plenty of money to have the absolute best players.
Sorry.
And then other teams who don't have that kind of money to not have the players to choose from. Two of my favorite movies in this world are 42. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. And Moneyball, both dealing with the game of baseball. America's game, by the way, just remember that. America's game, baseball. So, what stands out in your mind with the salaries, and are they ever going to solve the problem? Can the problem get solved?
I don't think the problem can ever get solved. It's whatever the market dictates. I mean, you look at Manny Machado last week, signed a $350 million something contract with the San Diego Padres. I would not have chosen the Padres, but that's him. But he's getting $300 million of that guaranteed. Guaranteed. So if he tears his quad and he's done for the year, he's still getting
gets his paycheck.
$300 million.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, Babe Ruth, when he was sold to the Yankees in 1920, that was for a whopping $100,000, which was unheard of back then.
Right. And there's always going to be some controversy with the business of baseball. I guess it's always that struggle. The guys who own these teams, it is a strict business for them. And then you have us, the fans, who just love the game and want to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And finding that balance is always obviously going to be a struggle. But Very interesting. Very interesting. Anything you'd like to add about the history of baseball?
I have been to 3 ballparks. I have been to the old Busch Stadium. I've been to Fenway Park, the cathedral of baseball. And my wife was up in Chicago last year or 2 years ago in business, and I went with her to her conference. And that Saturday, I snuck in to Wrigley Field, and I've got a picture of me trying to get into Wrigley Field before the Chicago police officer told me I had 2 choices: leave or Cook County Jail. So I chose obviously leave. But my goal when I retire is to go and see as many baseball games as I can.
I have a friend who last year,
pro stadiums.
A friend who last year he hit the final stadium. He wanted to sit and watch a game in every single major league park, and he finally
There's just
did.
nothing like it. There's just nothing like sitting up there, going to Boston with my dad and sitting up there and having a cold beverage,
Right.
and a hot dog at Fenway Frank and watching baseball. I mean, it's what we do. It's Americana. It's just simply. I mean, I can't put it any other way, Mr. Lewis. It's not really a pastime. It's just part of American culture.
Right.
I think is what it is. If you look at all the movies that came out of baseball and all the fantasy leagues and stuff about it, I mean, it's just.
I really feel like the game of football is taking over our current generation as sort of the beloved game.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's and football's great. I love football. I watch college football every single weekend. I think as Americans in today's society, we tend to love the contact of football. Obviously, baseball you don't see quite as much of that. Although every once in a while you'll see a pitch get thrown at somebody and then it empties.
Awesome. That's
right,
awesome. Those are
right, and then the dugout's empty
Those are
and
the best.
right. But what are your thoughts on the coming generation that is currently in, and really my generation too, and
Yeah.
yours, not really embracing the game quite as much
Yeah.
as what we would call the golden era?
Well, I think what you're seeing is you're seeing more and more kids grow up playing baseball. I know it's Snowden over at Snowden Grove. I mean, they're slammed
huge.
every weekend.
Huge.
But with this age and this digital age that we live in, and social media and all that, I think baseball is getting closer to that. I think what you're seeing now is, the games are taking a little too long, and I think they're trying to introduce a pitch count now, which means a pitcher has X number of seconds between pitches to throw, and I think they're trying to reduce the number of the time that a game is.
Right.
And they're trying to make the game trying to attract younger players, younger fans, just like golf, for example, is trying to attract a younger audience to the PGA Tour stops. But
That's interesting. Then your take is partly that the game of football was a little bit quicker to grab the media market
right.
than baseball was.
And I think baseball is starting to kind of come in. The new commissioner of baseball is a little bit more modern than Bug Selig, his previous commissioner, and so he's kind of trying to adapt to the 21st century technology,
Sure.
and all that. But
Because if you're not grabbing that technology, you're not going to grab the
No.
attention of the up and coming
no,
generation.
but I think baseball just I think it's just something that's going to stay with us. It's just going to stay with our culture. It's just never, pro leagues come and go. But baseball just always stays. It's just part of America.